Ni hao, konnichiwa, shalom, bonjour, namaste, jumbo.
Bienvenidos! Hey, my name is Jet Lee. This is Reading with Your Kids. We're beaming out to you and the entire planet from the beautiful, historical, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. You know, Reading with Your Kids, it's more than just a podcast. It's a movement. Our mission is to help families grow stronger, closer, and kinder through the magic of reading together. And we're thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to have you with us on that journey. Please help us grow the podcast by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, YouTube, Audible, Amazon Music, CastBox, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful episode for you today. First up, Korie Leigh is here to talk about her parenting book, When Everything Changes, Parenting Through Loss and Grief. Later in the show, Emily Gatto will be here to celebrate her new picture book, June's Big Wave. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. Hey, this is a message for all the authors that are listening. You know, you worked hard on your book. You spent months, maybe years, writing, revising, dreaming, and believing. You created characters, solved problems, overcame doubts, and brought a story into the world that only you could tell. Now it's time to help readers discover it. The Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program was created to celebrate outstanding children's books and to help authors reach more families. When a book earns our seal of approval, we don't stop with an award certificate. We review the book, feature it on the podcast, share it across social media, and help introduce it to parents, teachers, librarians, and caregivers who are looking for great books to share with kids. Because your story matters. And the families who need your story deserve a chance to find it. Please visit readingwithyourkids.com and click the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to learn more. That's readingwithyourkids.com. Let your book find the readers it was written for. Join us right now from the great state of New Mexico. And it's a state. It's not a country. It's a state, New Mexico. It's a wonderful place. Our guest is here today to celebrate her, celebrate the right, we'll see. The name of her book is When Everything Changes, Parenting Through Loss and Grief. Please welcome to the show, Korie Leigh. Korie, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And yes, I would absolutely say it's a celebration.
Awesome.
Anytime that you publish a book, it's a cause for celebration.
I love that because even though this is dealing with some pretty heavy topics that we would prefer not to have to deal with, it's a celebration because this is a tool that's going to help parents move forward.
Yes, absolutely. And that is why I write all of the books that I write, is to help empower kids and teenagers and families and adults to navigate these things that, we don't want them to happen, but they do. And so, being able to build that muscle of resilience to navigate these hard experiences, who wouldn't want that?
Right, right. So let's start. You're not like me, just some guy that decided he's going to start a literacy podcast. You actually have some creds behind you. Tell us a little bit about your background, please.
Yeah. So I am a thanatologist. And for your audience, that's like a thanama what? Thanatology is the interdisciplinary study of death, dying, grief, and loss. And so my PhD is in psychology, where I studied the lived experience of bereaved parents and siblings. So that's a little bit about what my PhD background is like. And I'm also an academic. So I am the director of a graduate and now undergraduate program in thanatology, which is completely online and asynchronous. So for your listeners that are like, I want to go into this field, you can study from the comfort of your home. And clinically, I have been working essentially in the space of grief and loss transition for over 22 years. And I started out as something called a child life specialist, which is probably another term that your listeners are like, a child life, well, what? So this profession is oftentimes found in hospital settings, helping children navigate and understand what's happening to them when they're hospitalized. Oftentimes we do this using medical play, procedural support, preparation, and helping to understand how child development is impacted when something stressful happens. And so we essentially translate pretty complicated and confusing language into a way that kids and families can understand it.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be honest with you. I started life long before podcasting, long before my 35 years doing educational magic shows. I was in human services and I worked in the juvenile justice system. So, but I have to tell you, I never heard the term thanatology.
Thanatology. So it comes from the Greek root thanos. So for your listeners that are, familiar with Greek mythology, right? Thanos was the god of death, and ology, study of. So we have thanatology.
Thanatology. All right. I have to practice pronouncing that. One of the things that struck me, because we've talked to a lot of authors who come on and written books that address the issue of grief and loss, and mainly the loss through death. And that's wonderful. And those books have been wonderful. But you address something in the notes that, grief and loss isn't just about somebody dying. It's about divorce. It's about incarceration. Early on in the show, we had an author on that wrote a very powerful book about a kid whose dad went to jail. And the number of kids that have somebody in their life in jail is mind-boggling.
Yes, it is. It isn't a small number.
No. We have millions of people who are incarcerated, and if each one of those persons has 4 or 5, that's not unreasonable people in their life, maybe kids, maybe a wife, certainly a mom. So you're talking 5-6x of the number of people who are incarcerated are affected by this.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the work that I do, even though I do work with a lot of kids and a lot of families who've had a loved one die, there's a lot of different types of losses that continue to go untalked about, unnoticed. It's what we call disenfranchised experiences, right? And disenfranchised grief is when society itself says, there is no place for your grief here. We have certain things that are acceptable and certain things that we will not talk about. And because we won't talk about it, there isn't a safe space to process it, to validate the very, very real emotions that are being felt and questions and frustrations about it. And so you have lots of loss experiences that have nothing to do with death that, I mean, really millions of people are experiencing. When you think about divorce, incarceration, when you think about climate disasters that are happening that are displacing entire communities. Maybe nobody died in that flood, but your house, the school that you went to, the place that you used to play is completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
We have millions of kids whose parents have been deported or going through immigration processes. We have families who have a loved one that's deployed overseas. We have millions of people who are experiencing an ambiguous loss. They don't know, is their loved one alive? Are they okay? Maybe their loved one struggles with substance use disorder. Maybe they're now without home and they're living somewhere out in the world and we don't know. So when we start to think about the different types of losses that someone can experience, it's a lot. And there are so few resources to help families navigate these experiences, which will touch each of us at some point, whether it's the hospitalization of a loved one, hospice, the death of a pet. That's another really, really common experience. That's oftentimes the kid's first experience with death. But there's so few resources to acknowledge it and to work through it as a family. So that's really one of the main reasons that I wrote this third book, When Everything Changes.
So talk a little bit about the book, please. Are we talking about different stories that you present and how the people get through it, or is it? Tell me what it is.
Yeah. So originally, when I pitched this to my publisher, I pitched it as what I called a field guide. So if you love birds, right? There's birding field guides. And how do you use field guides? You have the book, you take it with you, and you open to the page that you need when you need it. You don't necessarily read it cover to cover in one sitting. That was the initial thought for this book. There are lots and lots of experiences that families will go through. And when you're going through something, when there's a crisis, the parts of your brain that help you concentrate, read, and retain information are sluggish. You're not going to sit and read a book cover to cover and walk away remembering information and saying, ooh, that really helps. I'm going to go now implement it. You need specific, concrete, quick, bullet-pointed information. You need scripts. What do I say? How do I say it? What kind of questions are my kids going to ask? What are examples of ways that I can talk about this or answer those really hard questions? So essentially the book is split up into two sections. The first section, for those people that are interested and have the ability to sit and read a little bit, is essentially some like developmental and family theory. It's why am I writing the book this way? How do kids understand the world? What are these different kinds of loss experiences that are covered? Then it talks a little bit about, as the caregiver, how do you have these conversations first and foremost? Because if you're having them with your kids, they're happening to you too, right? And so there's lots of little tips and tricks and strategies for how to check in with yourself, how to understand where are your emotions? What are you feeling about this? What are the questions that you have about this? How do you address those first so that you can show up as present as possible for the kids in your life? And then the second half of the book is just those different kind of big life experiences: death of a pet, hospitalization, diagnosis of a chronic illness, divorce, incarceration. And then it's a little bit of information about what that experience might be like for a family. And then it just gets into those scripts and say this, don't say that, and tips and tricks and different approaches for how to navigate it as a family. So you can like take the book and just open it up to the section that you need and then close it and put it away for the next time that you need it.
One of the things that we had to address, my dad passed away when my son was 6 months old. So we had that loss there for the kids. My son wasn't aware necessarily at 6 months. And then my daughter never met my dad. My daughter never met my grandmother. And so there were a loss that was very heavy, you know, both big personalities in my life and my mom's life and my wife's life. So the kids knew, because we talked about it, that, hey, sometimes people aren't here. Sometimes people that we love, I don't know if they thought disappear, but aren't here. I'm thinking that that it's important to kind of talk to kids a little bit about the fact that nothing's permanent and that we may experience a loss early on before it happens, so it just doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I talk about in all of my books, my podcast interviews, when I do keynote presentations, when I talk to people on the street, is how incredibly important it is to be honest, to be frank and concrete with young kids. We can say, and we have to say the words, they died. Not that they went away, not that they're just not here, but that they died. And when someone dies, it means that their body stops working forever. Their heart doesn't beat. They don't sleep. They don't play. When you die forever. So helping kids understand concretely, what does it mean to die? Saying those words and helping to provide scaffolding or framework so that when it happens in their life, they've had these conversations, or they've at least been kind of, presented with this idea of death, right? And you can do this through bibliotherapy, through books, right, that talk about these. That's why I wrote my first book, What Does Grief Feel Like, which helps to talk with young kids about what is grief and why we feel it and what it feels like and what happens after someone we love dies. And for young kids especially, grief is developmental. And so what that looks like is that at each developmental stage that they enter into and they exit out of, they're going to revisit that loss with newfound understanding. So if a loss occurred when that child was 2 or 3, once that child turns 4, 5, and 6, and they start to enter into a new developmental stage, they're going to ask harder questions. They're going to ask more detailed questions. They're going to feel their feelings more intensely. And they're going to grieve. When that 6-year-old turns 10, 11, 12, the same thing will happen. Deeper questions, more abstract understanding. The information that you provided when they were 4 might not be sufficient anymore. They might want details.
Yeah.
And
so we can't just sit down to our 10-year-old and say, we already talked about this. Go away from me.
Exactly. We have to be able, and I talk about this in my most recent book, how important it is for the caregiver or the parent in that child's life to be able to hold space to have these conversations. And it is incredibly difficult. It's so challenging for parents to have to answer the same questions over and over, to have to revisit that loss over and over. But that's what kids and young people need. They have to be able to ask these questions and come to an understanding based on their development, because then we'll have milestones. So the time, when you graduate high school, when you have your first date, when you have your first of anything, and let's say it's a parent who died, that first will also be sprinkled with grief.
Yeah. Powerful. I guess telling your kids that your dog went to a big farm in upstate New York is not the answer.
It is not the answer.
That's where every dog that died in my neighborhood when I was growing up went to. And when I all go, oh, that must be the greatest farm in the world.
I know, right? We want to set our kids up to be successful in life. And that isn't just, academically or financially. It's also emotionally, right? And a part of that means that we have to trust them. We have to trust that our kids can process and understand the information in a direct, honest way.
Yeah.
Right. And that takes a lot of vulnerability, and it takes a lot of trust, for the adult to also say, our dog Fluffy died. His body stopped working. He's never going to bark or play fetch. And when we die forever. And it's really sad. And we're going to miss Fluffy. What are some ways that we can remember Fluffy? What are some ways that we want to make a space, in our home? Maybe we want to have a picture of him or light a candle. Maybe we want to bury him in the backyard and have a full-on funeral for him. Let the kids be involved, and then let them tell you with their behaviors if they want to or if they don't. Oftentimes these conversations, adults will be quite anxious to have them because they think that they're going to be these very in-depth, hour-long conversations. Sometimes those 2 sentences that I said, Fluffy died, it means that their body stopped working, and when you die forever, is it. That's 10 seconds. Sometimes that's all that kids want, and that's all that they need. Other times they'll say, well, wait, does everybody die? What does it mean to die? How come he had to die? Right? They'll let you know with their questions. Right.
Yeah. You bring up a memory. I don't mean to add humor to this heavy conversation, but it brings up a memory.
Yeah.
My daughter, I mentioned that I did education magic shows, and we had a dove in the act. And then my daughter decided, no, the dove is my pet. I love PB. And I said, okay. And when she was 3, PB passed away, and we had a funeral for PB. And my daughter's really cute. She surprised us because she found a veil, and she came to the funeral out in the backyard with the veil. But it was her way of processing it. And it didn't prevent her from wanting another pet and loving it. I do have to ask a question. I know I have a very strong faith tradition, and I know there are people listening. How do you reconcile saying to a kid, hey, the body's dead, it ain't working anymore, it's not going to work anymore, but you told me that we're going to be in heaven one day?
Yeah. So everything that I do, the clinical work that I do with kids and families, it's rooted in child development, but it is also rooted in cultural and religious understanding, right? That people have so many different beliefs. There's so many different rituals and practices and customs, and I don't know anything about anything, right? And so what I like to do with families is ask them, what do you believe? What language have you used in your family? If you believe in heaven and a spirit or a soul, over the years, I've, come to this script is what I call it. I say, start here and see where it goes, of helping kids understand the difference between dying and what happens with the body, and then what happens with a spirit or a soul. And so I'll start that conversation exactly how I did with you, where, Fluffy died, his body stopped working. And when something or someone dies, they die forever. But in our family, we believe in a soul. And that's the part of us that makes us special. We can't see it and we can't touch it, but that part, that invisible part, goes to heaven. But Fluffy's body stays here.
Yeah. It's important to, this is really hard, and this is something that I don't think any parent wants to deal with, but we have to. And what a really wise choice to have something, to have a resource on hand, so that when it does happen, we can open up the book.
Yeah, exactly. It's being proactive also. It's, it's holding both, kind of like how you apologize for having humor. Don't apologize. Like the world and grief itself is about duality and complexity and living in this in-between space. We can both feel profound sadness and anger, and also joy and humor, and find beauty at the same time. Right. And so that's a part of the philosophy I have in writing the books that I write and doing the work that I do, is that who better to prepare your child for these experiences than you? And if you have a book on hand, when the crisis happens, you don't have to think about, where do I go? Who do I ask? What book do I get? What website do I go to? You already have it. And you can just flip to it, go to the page that you need, read the script. There's also so many resources out there that are fantastic to help support families and educators and caregivers to have these kind of conversations.
Yeah. Talking about being prepared, I remember my son had a first girlfriend in high school, and they were very, very close. And all I said to him one day was, we were talking about it, and he's talking about how much he loves her and blah, 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 and all this. And I said, listen, dude, this is great. I'm really happy for you. I hope that you guys are happy together forever. But if something happens, because oftentimes it does, just come to me and talk about it, because it's going to hurt. And a couple months later, he said, hey, Bob, remember you told me it was going to hurt? And I go, yeah. He said, it really hurts. And we had a conversation. And I think the fact, I would hope that he would have come to me anyways, but I think the fact that we had kind of laid the groundwork there to say, hey, I'm here. Something bad, we can talk this out.
Absolutely. And that's an example of a loss. Your first heartbreak, your first love, your first breakup. That's really, really powerful. And it's a doorway. It's an opportunity to develop more closeness and trust with the relationship you have with your kids. Is you can only hope that when something like that happens, if they come to you, and if you set the stage, and if you approach these kind of topics with openness and honesty and humility, right? And that's the other thing too, is so often parents are like, I want to say the right thing. There never really is a perfect right thing to say. And oftentimes kids will ask you questions that you genuinely don't know the answer to. And the best thing to do is to say, that's a really good question. I don't know. Let's think about it together. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's so important. Hey, you know what else is important? We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about When Everything Changes, and also find out more about you and your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on social media. I'm not like an influencer or anything, so I'm not posting all of the time, but I do have, helpful content. So you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Korie Leigh. And my website, which is KorieLeigh.com, has tons of information. It has a media tab, so you can listen to other podcasts and newsprint. It has information about, having me come to do keynote presentations or lectures, webinars, trainings and things like that. And it has an extensive biography on my background and credentials and how I got into this work. And my publisher is Free Spirit Publications, which you can get our books anywhere that books are sold. So my preference is you walk down to your local indie bookstore and you say, I would like to order this book and I would like for you to keep it in stock. That's the other kind of key point too with the indie bookstores. Alternatively, if you have listeners that are a part of hospitals, school districts, nonprofit organizations, and you're like, we need these this book or all of these books for our patients or our clients or our staff, you can do bulk orders as well for a discount, and just reach out to me directly and I can connect you with the person at my publisher who can do that.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think it'd be a great resource for a school or, like you said, for a hospital. Absolutely. We've had a great, powerful conversation with the author of When Everything Changes, Parenting Through Loss and Grief. Our guest has been Dr. Korie Leigh. Hey, Dr. Korie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me and for having these kind of conversations with your listeners.
Hey, my friends, if you are like so many people I know, one of the favorite parts of your morning is that first quiet cup of coffee before the day gets rolling. And recently, I discovered a company I think a whole lot of our Reading with Your Kids family, you're just going to love it. It's called Afuera Coffee Company. What really caught my attention is that Afuera works directly with local farmers in Central and South America, especially in El Salvador, a nation I adore. And all their beans come from certified Rainforest Alliance farms. So you're not just getting incredible coffee, you're supporting ethical farming and environmental conservation too. And friends, this is not ordinary supermarket coffee. These are specialty, hand-selected beans grown in rich volcanic soil, and you can taste the difference. Smooth, rich, aromatic. Whether you love a bold espresso or a lighter roast, they really do have something for every coffee lover. Another thing I love, their packaging is compostable or recyclable, and 5% of every sale goes to charities that help preserve the great outdoors. Because they're sponsoring Reading with Your Kids, I arranged an exclusive 15% discount for our listeners. Just head on over to afueracoffee.com and use the promo code READ at checkout. And yes, when you use that code, you're also helping support the podcast. So great coffee, helping farmers, helping the planet, and helping Reading with Your Kids. That's a pretty magical combination right there. You know, one of my favorite family memories growing up, and honestly still today, is gathering around the grill in the summertime. Good food, kids running around, laughing, maybe somebody reading on a picnic blanket while dinner cooks. There's just something magical about it. And speaking of cookouts, I want to tell you about a company our family has been enjoying called Big Fork Brands. Now, friends, this is not ordinary cookout food. Big Fork makes incredible bacon sausage, craft jerky, meat sticks, and those amazing Chicago-style sauces that instantly level up burgers, hot dogs, fries, all your cookout favorites. Their bacon sausage is kind of legendary. They combine hardwood smoked bacon with premium pork and create flavors like hickory and applewood, maple and brown sugar, and spicy 3-pepper. Honestly, it sounds fancy, but it's really just fun, delicious food families can enjoy together. And another thing I really appreciate, they work with small Iowa farms, raising heritage hogs outdoors without any antibiotics. So there's a real commitment to quality and sustainability behind everything they make. So here's my challenge to you this summer. Plan a Read Together cookout night. Fire up the grill. Put the phones away for a little while. Enjoy a great meal together. And in the evening, reading together as a family. And to help make it happen, Big Fork Brands is giving our listeners an exclusive 20% discount. Just head on over to bigforkbrands.com and use the promo code READ at checkout. Great food, great conversation, great books. That sounds like real magic to me. Joining us right now from right outside the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, our guest is here today to celebrate a really powerful series. The first book in the series is called June's Big Wave. Please welcome to the show, Emily Gatto. Emily, how are you?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Delighted to have you on. Emily, in addition to being a children's author, Emily is a licensed certified social worker. So you're writing these books about big emotion with a lot of experience helping kids and parents deal with big emotions.
Yeah, definitely. I like to think a lot of us have had our own journeys that get us into a field like being a therapist, social worker, psychologist, fields of the like. So certainly I pull from my own journey, my parents' journey, and then coming into the professional business of it all, seeing what many people are going through. So a lot of different areas pulled from.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about June's Big Wave, please.
Yeah, so June's Big Wave is the first in a series of 4 books, and actually we have one more coming out soon. This is a little bit different in nature about her brother James. But June's Big Wave is a narrative children's book. So I am a millennial. I watched a lot of good 90s Nickelodeon growing up. So if any other millennial or millennial moms out there remember the show Clarissa Explains It All, and in Clarissa Explains It All, she would narrate people through her day or her life. So she kind of actually it's almost like the original kind of documentary style reality show now that we now know, but it was all scripted. So June is very much that way. June talks to the reader, talks to the child. The start of every story is like, hi, my name is June, and here's where I am, and here's what I'm going through. So in June's Big Wave, June is at the beach and feeling very anxious about the different things that can happen, the wind blowing her ball into the ocean, her sandcastle down. And because of those worries, she wants to leave. So within the scene of her being on the beach, June talks the reader through her worries, and some common cognitive behavioral therapy tools will give kids to work through their worries. And then, by the end, she uses those tools and is feeling better in the book. I recognize life isn't always full circle like that. But for the sake of the story, that's what the kids get. And then at the end, there's a caregiver companion guide. So it's really all of the tools I would give caregivers in the first few therapy sessions, honestly, in how to work through a situation like that or worries with their child.
As I'm hearing you, I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, how horrible for a kid to be at the beach and have all these worries.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. And that's what we run into frequently with our kids, right? Like, especially when we're setting up something fun for them, a play date, a new activity. So there's actually another book I wrote, June's Kick, where she's learning soccer, going to soccer and afraid to try that, right? So a lot of times, what I always say is my absolute goal is that we don't let worries run our life. And the earlier we can teach kids that and to decipher, hey, what's a real warning sign that maybe this is a bad idea or there's danger, and what's a false alarm, and empower them in that, all the better. And a lot of us, of course, didn't get that, just because these conversations are on mental health and mindfulness, and feelings are just more and more present. So, fast forward from my own childhood and going into the field, I worked at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and I was in primary care. And a lot of the topics I wrote the June series on are things I just saw all the time. And we didn't have enough manpower to really see, man and woman power, to really see all of the kids that needed those tools. Not all kids need, ongoing outpatient therapy. Some just need to start to learn, what are these feelings I'm having? What can I do about them? It's kind of an early intervention way in. And so I was like, okay, well, that just makes the information all the more accessible to put it into a book this way. That's, a lot more, at least economically accessible than therapy for many people as well. Not that it's not meant as a replacement, but can be an early intervention tool or a complement.
We hear a lot about kids and anxiety these days, certainly a whole lot more than I don't think I ever heard the word anxiety used in conjunction with the kid when I was a kid, and of course, almost 100 years ago. But still, it seems I'm curious. What came first? Are we seeing are kids actually more anxious these days, or are we just diagnosing it and seeing it or recognizing it more?
I am the biggest fan of this saying, and I feel like if I had a quarter for every time I said this in a day, anyone that's ever worked with me has heard me say this, multiple things can be true at one time. And I think it is a situation for that saying, right? And I'm not pulling from the anecdotal research, so to speak, when I respond to that question this very moment. But actually, I should say, research shows us, right, that there are increasing rates of anxiety. We know that our kids are faced with more, just the exposure by, I don't want to say just social media, but all of the media outlets. They just know more at younger ages. They're growing up more quickly. There are just different facets that are increasing anxiety at earlier ages. And also, like you said, we're talking about it. We're labeling feelings. I mean, the pendulum has really swung to this positive parenting where very early on parents are validating their kids' feelings and labeling them. I mean, even my son has a feelings pillow on his bed. He's 4, and he'll point to the faces he's feeling, right? Whereas otherwise, most of the time he grunts and throws things, and that's what it is. So I think it really is a multifaceted area. Statistics and research show it's certainly rising, but then I do also think we're identifying it more. And more, I will say, from a therapy end, we'll have a lot of parents who will bring their kids in and they're like, hey, so on the side, I should say, so that there's context to this, I'm the director and founder of an outpatient therapy practice called TLC Wellness, located at Audubon, Bluebell, and virtually. So when I reference people bringing their kids in, I'm talking about our therapy practice. But, that the thing they're bringing the child in for may not be glaring. Whereas before, a parent might just bring their kid in if there's like a big situation in the family, a trauma. Now they'll say like, yeah, they're feeling a little anxious. They get really nervous before sports games. We'd love to give them the tools. Mm-hmm. So there's just that increased willingness too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. How did you get into the field? I started my professional life in social work, dealing with kids in the juvenile justice system. And did that for about 8 to 10 years and said, you know what? This ain't for me. I'm going to become a professional clown. And that's what I did for the next 35 years. And it was
what a switch.
Very good decision for me. How did you get into the field?
So, this is again one of those questions where I'm like, wow, there's a lot of ways I could answer it. But so I will say, statistically speaking, I was among the statistics of girls that fell between the cracks. I wasn't a behavioral problem. I was not the squeaky wheel, but I had undiagnosed learning disability. Later, at some point in my K through 12 experience, was diagnosed with ADHD, and struggled my way through school. And I realize now in my adulthood how actually really capable and smart I am. I just had to figure out how I learned and what worked for me and what didn't. And it just didn't fit into the box of what was needed to be successful in the classroom. So that really started an early journey to a struggle that I feel really passionate about helping now, but not just directly with just that population, but across the board. And then also like parents whose kids are struggling. So then later on in high school, when I continued to kind of go through the things I was going through, I had a mentor that was a social worker. And when you're struggling in school, people don't talk to you a whole lot about all the possibilities that are out there for you. So because that person was so front and center for me and I looked up to them and I always just had a heart to help, it was like, okay, I'll go to school for social work. Because that just felt really tangible and feasible and I was drawn to it. And thankfully it really worked out. I love it. I have also worked in the area of juvenile justice. I've worked with adults with chronic severe mental illness being discharged from the state hospitals when there were lots of closures, occurring in that way. I've done in-home family therapy and worked at Children's Hospital. Now I run an outpatient practice, but there's really not been a day that's gone by for me that has had any doubt that this is where I'm meant to be.
Okay. Well, hopefully you won't go down the road of professional clown after speaking with me today.
Hopefully not.
Not a bad.
Now I'm terrible at makeup, so I don't know how good I would be because you'd really have to master like the art of makeup with being a clown.
Well, yeah, but these days, when I clown, I don't use makeup anymore. We just use costuming and whatnot. But we've gone off the trail here. The idea of basically what you've created in the June series is a bibliotherapy library for parents. What's your goal? Like, how many books are you seeing, and what kind of topics are you considering addressing within the books?
Yeah, I mean, what I have learned is you can have the best product that comes from love, passion, history, research, experience. But you have to get it out there. People have to hear about it. So I appreciate people like you who are willing to give a shot to someone who's just trying to get information out there. So I will take it as far as it can go. The wonderful thing with June is that really her story can be applied to so many situations kids and parents see themselves through. So the other June books that we have out right now, like I mentioned, one is about starting a new activity. Another is June's Brother Troubles. So that's, we've got lots of books. I have 3 kids of my own. So I know we got a lot of books when we were adding to the family about mom is pregnant, what to expect, new sibling. June's Brother Troubles is about when that little lump in a log is now taking your toys and telling on you and causing a ruckus and how to handle that, the sibling squabbles. And then there's June's Dreams, which is about just your typical, childhood challenges of sleep regression, nightmares. I'm a developmental fact nerd. I love developmental facts because that can even help level set parents' frustrations and challenges with where their kids are. And I will be the first to say that I don't follow everything perfectly. Parenting is a hard journey. But my hope is just really for parents to not feel alone in that and for kids to get information in a way that they can digest.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned dreams, and was it dream regression, did you say?
Sleep regression. Yeah.
What? I've never heard that before. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so we know a lot about, sometimes they'll call them developmental leaps that cause sleep regression in early baby, right? So when children are developing at such fast rates in their brain and body development, it can cause disruptions of sleep. And so I think a lot of people are more familiar and attuned to that in like before year 1 and when they expect that. But then you get a sleep schedule down and all of a sudden your 3, your 4, your 5-year-old is waking up with bad dreams. They're afraid to go to bed by themselves. They're coming into your room at night. And I think the hardest thing in parenting is like the easiest go-to response usually creates the hardest habits to break. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to take that one night and like, my name is Emily and I routinely fall asleep in my 4-year-old's bed. So it's just so much easier said and done. But that, one like, okay, fine, I'll just fall asleep in your bed turns into now a habit that's really hard to break. It's not uncommon for 5-year-olds to have increase in nightmares and bad dreams, or even actually for 5-year-olds to think and have questions about death, which can lead into sleep or fears around that. It's actually not until around 5 that children begin to decipher fact from fiction. So like we took our kids to this, glow in the dark, like that blue light, type of thing, mini golf place. Mm-hmm. And it's got all these monsters and it's meant to be fun. But to my 4-year-olds, everything is real. The guy in the bluey suit is really bluey. They're not deciphering yet that real versus fake. Whereas my 7-year-old is like, well, you could unplug that monster. And the bluey suit has a man or a woman inside of there. So when we got home that night, my 4-year-old is like, those monsters are going to come into my room. They followed us home, right? So it causes all of these fears that to us, we can see the logic, but developmentally to them, this is what's really real. So there's just these different developmental aspects and regressions that can happen. So helping kids with the tools, again, going back to that narrative format for June, all of her bad dreams actually came from bad dreams I wrote down from my oldest child. So my middle name is June, as is my oldest child. So there's a lot of interweave there, but then there's also, the sleep intervention tools within it. So hopefully that helps to clarify.
It does. Boy, kids, it's tough being a kid.
It's so hard being a kid. I give them so much credit. It's even like at dinner time, sometimes we get into this because, my partner will be like, well, they need to sit and eat. I'm like, well, I mean, no one tells me when I have to sit and eat. I eat when I'm hungry. Like, I'm not negating, having to parent, but it's so hard. You're being told all the time where to go, what to do. There's little autonomy and there's so much going on at one time for them in terms of development. They're developing at hyper speed and kids' brains aren't fully developed. We develop from the back to the front. Actually, it explains this in Brother Troubles, which actually if they have an only child, it would still be beneficial because we learn about the development of the brain and how they're quite literally under construction and at a different place than us. And it's easy to forget that. So yeah, it is. I say that all the time.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I launched Reading with Your Kids is that I know that the relationship I have with my now adult kids was built on a foundation of reading together. And building that bond was so very important. I've been very pleasantly surprised to learn about all the other wonderful benefits that kids get from having their parents or an adult caregiver, someone they love, read with them. Can you just, from a therapist point of view or even a parent therapist point of view, talk a little bit about those benefits that we give to our kids and we take that 15, 20 minutes a day to sit down and read with them?
Yeah. I mean, so important to that. When I worked at what's known as CHOP here, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, they have a reach out and read program and give out books in some of the primary cares and whatnot. So it's hugely important, even from the time that they're little babies.
Mm-hmm.
So not only helps from what they're learning, but also just with language development and understanding words and connection. And even the importance of reading to your child. My first grader was learning to read. I asked her teacher, like, should I still be reading to her? Should I be really kind of making her read everything? And the teacher said, no, huge benefits to you continuing to read to her. We don't really, whichever one it is, her reading, you reading is fine. It's just so important to have that reading. And even in connection, what I love is hearing parents talking about, like, they're rereading the Harry Potter series with their kids. And we're talking like young elementary age kids. It doesn't have to be, but and older too. So like reliving these memories and stories together. And it opens up for questions too,
One of the things that I've said here on the podcast, and again, I'm just this dopey guy that made a living running around making kids laugh, but I really believe that when the most important person in a kid's life is reading a book and turns to the kid and says, what do you think about that? What do you think the character would have done? I think that that's incredibly empowering.
Yeah, definitely. It feels more natural. I say we often adult kids, right? Like they turn off as soon as, if I'm meeting with a parent and a child, that could be a young child, it could be a teenager, it could be an adult child. As soon as we're at like sentence 4 or 5 that the parent's going, I'm like, oh, they're out. So when it feels, and it's just by nature of that parent-child relationship, my kids do the same things to me, right? So when it's more of an organic opportunity to just have a conversation, explore, maybe the kid also feels off the spot when it's about a character. If we ask them that about their life, they might be like, I don't know, or get overwhelmed or give that a quick response. But if it's about, per se, in this instance, June, it feels less intense and more kind of removed. We're just talking about a story, but there's so much learning in that. So it does just give so much. And I love that idea of curiosity around it. We're not just reading to read. We can actually create conversation from it.
Yeah. Well, let's tell everybody where they can go, because I know they're curious about June and where they can go to find out more about June and find out more about you and your practice.
Yeah, so they can find more about June at flutterbypress.com. That is who we have published through. So Flutterby, F-L-U-T-T-E-R, by B-Y, press.com. We are also, of course, on Amazon. So, looking up the June series, June's Big Wave, any of them, and they'll come up. And then they can learn more about our practice at wellwithtlc.com. And then we're also on social at wellwithtlc.com, and they can find June on social as well. I just gave there's so many things now as a way to get out.
Yeah. We had a great time speaking to the author of June's Big Wave. It is part of a great series from our guest, Emily Gatto. Hey, Emily, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love, especially someone who may be experiencing grief. Please, I think it would really help a whole lot. And, of course, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. Also, we'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at readingwithyourkids on Instagram, at Gently Magic on X, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, and our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Korie Leigh. Please be sure to check out When Everything Changes, Parenting Through Loss and Grief. I also want to thank Emily Gatto. Please be sure to check out June's Big Wave. I want to thank my amazing team, Daylene Rose, Advina Lopez, Chris Doherty, Ella Battier. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better, kinder, more empathetic place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.
Sometimes we feel so far apart, like we're living in different worlds. But kindness is a super spark that connects all boys and girls. If you look inside your heart, you'll see we're not so different after all. Oh, we're gonna melt down the walls that separate. Kindness and love can always conquer hate. Real magic happens when we celebrate all the ways we shine. Together we're great. Together we're great.
We all laugh in every language. We all dance in our own style. Let's hold hands and build a rainbow that can stretch a million miles.
One big team, come join the crew. There's room in this world for me and you. Oh, we're gonna melt down the walls that separate. Kindness and love can always conquer hate. Real magic happens when we celebrate all the ways we shine. Together we're great. Together we're great. Who's got the magic? We do. Who makes the change? Me and you. What breaks the wall? Breaks the fall. Breaks the thread. We're gonna melt down the walls that separate. Kindness and love can always conquer hate. Real magic happens when we celebrate all the ways we shine. Together we're great.